Yeah, flash boiling can happen. If you're not familiar with the phenomenon, that's when you are heating water and the gas bubbles that are trying to come out of solution of the liquid water don't get a chance to come out as bubbles. And so the water vapor is just in there in the liquid trying to find its way out. And then like it does all at once suddenly, and the water explodes in your face. And that happens because whatever vessel the water is being heated in does not have any nucleation sites in it. Those are small little imperfections and scratches and bumps where the water vapor that is starting to form can't get a foothold, can't hold on to, because water is made up of water molecules, and when the water is solid like ice, they just kind of like vibrate in place. And as you add energy into that system, into that situation, they start moving a little bit faster, and that's liquid. They're still being held together with bonds, but it's kind of like magnets. Like magnets are very strong when you hold them together, but you can pull them together with a little bit of effort. Well, in this scenario, the heat is the effort. You keep adding heat into the liquid. Now you've got a gaseous form of water vapor, and the molecules are bouncing all over, pinballing all over. Well, now you're converting a liquid water into a gas state of water, and it doesn't all happen at once. Usually the molecules are starting to separate away from each other. They're starting to move faster, and there are all these little eddies and currents in a cup or a bowl whenever you're heating up water. It's kind of uneven, but by random chance, those water vapor molecules that are starting to form are getting close to each other, and they are trying to form bubbles. They're called embryos, actually. The little water vapor molecules that are moving around trying to get their way out of solution. They're not buoyant, they're just like one little molecule. It takes a certain diameter of clusters of these embryos before there's some math involved and there's some surface tension, but then they turn into a bubble, and they have enough buoyancy to raise up out of the liquid. And that's what boiling is. But that's really hard to do all by themselves. What makes it way easier for the water vapor molecules to find each other and cluster together as little friends and then be big enough to get out of the water is if they've got an imperfection to stick to in the side of the glass or on the bottom of the pot. People deliberately use this by making, I think they're called nucleation glasses, for beer, because beer has dissolved carbon dioxide in it, and as soon as you open up the beer or the soda, it immediately wants to go out into the environment and even out with the CO2 in the environment, which there isn't very much. And so companies deliberately laser engrave little rough spots on the inside of glasses for the CO2 to start propagating onto, so that they can raise up to the surface of the beer. And that's what makes these pretty little streams of bubbles coming up. And champagne flutes do that too. They would rough up the bottom of the tall glasses for champagne so that the carbon dioxide would collect at the bottom and come up in these pretty little strands. But if there are no nucleation sites in the vessel that the water is being heated in, then it just gets hotter and hotter, and more of that water turns into water vapor and wants to turn into water vapor, but it can't. And so when you introduce anything into that vessel, into that mug, a tea bag, your finger, instant coffee even sometimes, suddenly you've offered a nucleation site where all of that kind of free water vapor can hold onto and all the friends can grab onto it, and then suddenly you have one big bubble. Everything escapes. The water vapor now makes the bubble, and I knew of a guy who blew the bottom of his coffee mug off that way, just by pulling it out of the microwave. Just jostling the mug sometimes is enough to offer that opportunity for the gas molecules to poof. And while we're talking about it, pressure inhibits bubble growth, because if you were to take your vessel that you're heating up, the water you're heating up, and then seal it, you have now reduced the amount of room there is for those molecules to move around, so the bubbles will not be able to form as easily. That's how pressure cookers work. You're able to superheat liquids without making them boil. And conversely, you have to use a pressure cooker at higher altitudes because the pressure is much lower, meaning that the water boils at a lower temperature. It's going to take forever to cook your potatoes. And water boils at room temperature inside of a vacuum because of this. It doesn't need heat. It doesn't need an added energy source for those bonds to loosen up. It just needs a decrease in pressure. And it's not hot either. The water vapor just escapes out and actually leaves cold water behind, because the molecules that have a little bit more heat in them are the ones that are going to escape out of the liquid, leaving the colder water behind in the vacuum when it boils. I'm going to go get my groceries.